This is The Clash, where the real world clashes with a true Christian worldview. Join former professional wrestler Chris Whaley, known as the Masked Saint, who is an author, pastor, and teacher that brings his wrestling skills into the squared circle and tackles real-life issues. Along with Jeff Dixon, best-selling author, internationally known teacher, leader, and pastor who is not afraid to tackle the tough issues of the world we live in. Together they form a tag team of wisdom in The Clash.
Hi, welcome once again to The Clash, where we take a Christian worldview and it collides with the culture around us. I'm joined by my co-host,
Chris Whaley,
and we're here to share with you some stories about life and how we live life more effectively for Jesus. Now, Chris, through the course of your career in wrestling, you met a lot of people and you've made a lot of great relationships. And so we've been benefiting from that by being able to talk to some of your friends. You have one today that you're going to introduce to us, and I am a big fan of this guy. I remember him when I was a kid, and I remember watching him, and he was one of my favorites. And so I'm thrilled about the interview we're getting ready to have, but go ahead and introduce us.
Okay. Well, I guess this guy actually got into wrestling about 5 years before I did, even though we're, pretty close in age. But in Florida, man, this guy was a rock star. He wrestled with Mike Graham a lot in tag team. He wrestled in singles. He was the Florida heavyweight champion. He was tag team champion. He left championship wrestling from Florida. He wrestled in other territories, but he worked for WWE. He worked as Skinner. Worked as Doink the Clown, and the guy that I'm talking about is Steve Keirn. Steve is just not only was he a great wrestler, but he's just a great guy. And I think you're really going to enjoy hearing his journey of faith.
Yeah. And so we're going to go to that right now. Hi. Thanks for not leaving during the break because, well, I'm obviously trying to get you to buy something. I really am. If you're anything like me, middle of summer, sometimes it gets really hot. We film here in Florida, it's hot all the time. And every once in a while, you'd like to take a little bit of a break. Get a little Christmas spirit going in your life. If so, I have a suggestion for you. I have written a novella based upon the characters that show up in my novels. It's called Then Christmas Happens. It's available in the exclusive paperback edition, the collectible hardback edition, or if you're lazy like I am and you want someone to read to you, you can also get this book on Audible in about an hour and 10, 15 minutes. Hear it, read it, and get a little Christmas magic happening in your life. To get it, you have to go to Amazon, look up my name, Jeff Dixon, and then let Christmas happen in your life.
We want to start by hearing your spiritual journey. If you could tell us how you came to know the Lord and tell us how that took place in your life.
I'm going to try to condense this because it's kind of a long story. It started early in my life, and the reason was is I was raised in a military family, and my mother was from small town in Mississippi, northeastern Mississippi, and very country. And my mother was, had us in church every Sunday, no matter where we were stationed or living on bases or whatever it was. But, as a kid, sometimes it just doesn't connect. And as I travel forward, fast forward to 13 years old, my dad gets shot down in Vietnam. He was a fighter pilot in the United States Air Force. He gets shot down in Vietnam when I'm 13 years old. And the first day, they came to our house, and as I come through the front door, a colonel grabs me by the arm and hustles me down the hallway. And I'm looking, there's my mom crying in the kitchen. And he goes, "Son, sit down on your bed." And when I sat down, he turned me around and he said, "Your dad died today in Vietnam." And I started crying, and he said his plane was the first one ever shot down with a SAM missile. He's dead. You're the man of the family from now on. You have to dry up your eyes and be the man of the family. And he wouldn't be happy with you being a crybaby. I went on to college, and I went to Mississippi College in right outside of Jackson, Mississippi, where Ted DiBiase lives now. It's Clinton, Mississippi.
Yeah.
I was in college, and it's a Baptist college, and I went to a revival, and I gave myself to Christ there. And I walked forward, and I just joined all these college students, and it was so moving. I was all in, but it just kind of dissipated, and it kind of went away, and the feeling kind of went away, and so I didn't really grasp it. And then I went through so many experiences, and then I never realized all these times that I'd answer the question, they'd say, well, you know, I heard you grew up without a dad. And I go, yep, sure did. So what was that like? I said, well, I had to become a man in a family at 13 and quit all sports and went to work. And you go, well, you what? And I said, well, I didn't know what being the man of the family was. And then I've tried to accept Christ, and I just don't feel like there's nothing magical happening. I don't feel anything. I don't feel any different. And I still, you know, am easy to sway going any other way. Now I'm going to jump all the way into 1995 and right in that era. Now I'm right at 50 years old. At 50 years old, now I'm on the verge of retirement, making decisions, can't figure out what I'm going to be. Haven't really made a big jump back into the WWE yet as an agent, so I'm just squandering between two things, trying to figure out how to feed a family and trying to figure out how to, you know, keep us in a house. Because I didn't want to be a wrestler. One of my vows was when I was real young was I'm not going to be an old wrestler. I can't do that. I was wrestling guys when I started here in Florida. I was wrestling guys old enough to be my grandpa. Right around when I was 50, I was trying to diversify, and Brian Blair and I bought a Gold's Gym in Tampa. And I had a member come in, and this member brought in a Bible. He said, I understand you're really trying to be spiritual, or you're really searching. And I said, yeah, but even going to the Baptist church I'm going to now, Idlewild, I haven't joined it yet. And the reason I haven't joined it is I'm just kind of on the throne back and forth. For some reason, well, I know what the reason was. It was God. He was talking to me, and he brought a messenger. He brought me in a Bible, one-day Bible. You read it, Old Testament, New Testament, Proverbs, Psalms, whatever, you read the whole thing day by day. If you read it every day of that year, you finish both Bibles, the New Testament and Old Testament. I just got so into it, I started reading. Then I started reading more. Then I got to be really close friends with my pastor at Idlewild. His name was Ken Whitten. I really got messages from him when he spoke, and he was a pastor. And then I wasn't in church. I wasn't at a revival. I was at home. And I was having a reality check, and I was realizing, you know, that life is quick and everything's gone by me in a blur. And all of a sudden, I'm trying to go back through my life and say, what happened? And they go, well, I witnessed my mother. That's the first thing I started to testify to. I witnessed my mother get on her hands and knees every night. For 7.5 years, my dad was a prisoner of war. And she never gave up, and she waited patiently on the Lord. And I didn't even rationalize when he came home. It was a miracle. It was a miracle he was still alive, number one, but for him to return and spend another 20 years in freedom with my mom and a retirement age, it was like a blessing from God. And I started realizing all those times that I had been blessed and how I had a Savior watching over me. And then I started, if I did any jobs, I started repeating Philippians 4:13 every time I went to the ring. And I kept saying these things in my mind, you know, and connecting. And then all of a sudden, it wasn't magical, but I felt different. All of a sudden, I was asking more for forgiveness, and I was thanking him more for what I had than worrying about what he could provide for me. I was saying, thank you. I get it now. Thank you. It took me too long. It was somewhere in 50. I'll be 73 in September. So that just gives you an idea how long that I've felt this way and how long I've been, a faithful follower of Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior. And I acknowledge him publicly every time I speak because I know Matthew and I know Luke. And he says in there, acknowledge me publicly and I'll acknowledge you before my Father. So there I am. But I was a wild child in the wrestling business, and I was around some wild people. And I kept thinking, it's a miracle. And that's another one of the miracles. I had a father the whole time. I had a father for when my dad was shot down, but he was in heaven, and I couldn't rationalize that. But the whole time I had a guiding light. I had the Holy Spirit directing my feet. I mean, I was stumbling forward until I finally stumbled to the very end and I was on my knees and I realized I'm an older guy. What am I going to do in my life? I need to surrender. And I surrendered to Jesus, and my life has been amazing since then. I mean, it's been amazing. I'm so blessed. Amen. Now all I feel about is the thankfulness that, whatever it is. Sure. And when my time comes, my time's there. I've already given my life to Christ. So I win either way.
Hi, Jeff Dixon. You might recognize me from The Clash, but that's not what I want to talk to you about. I want to invite you to visit a website. It's touchandchange.net. Touchandchange.net. That is the website for the ministry of the Church at 434, where I am the pastor. Chris Whaley is one of our pastors on staff. And so while you're familiar with us, you may not be familiar with some of the resources that we have to offer that we think will help you in your journey of faith. And you can find all sorts of stuff there with brand new programming that's released every night at 7 o'clock. And you can join us for worship live each and every Sunday morning at 9 or 11:15. Or you can watch streaming reruns of those worship services. And you can go back all the way back to when I had dark hair. And so we would love for you to come and join us and be a part of the journey of faith with us at the Church at 434 at touchandchange.net. As you can hear, Steve's journey of faith really has been a journey.
Great journey of faith.
And a fascinating story, and one that I think there's a lot of life lessons for us all to learn from in there. Mm-hmm. Before we end the episode, though, we're going to let him tell another story. Mm-hmm. And this is an interesting story because this is a near-death experience.
Yeah, right.
When people talk about near-death stuff all the time, Chris, you ever had a near-death experience?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. In Texas, I showed up one night, didn't know who I was working against, and I asked the promoter, who am I working against? And he pointed to this big black kid putting his boots on. And he said, he's a football player. At that time, there were a lot of football players getting into professional wrestling. And so we got in the ring, and man, as soon as we locked up, I knew this guy was green. He didn't know what he was doing. And he literally tossed me around like a rag doll. It's closest I've ever come to breaking my neck. And I could not wait to get out of that ring. So that's a near-death experience for me. But it is nothing like the one you're going to hear right now from Steve Keirn.
I mean, I almost died in Nashville. I lost my blade. I used to carry my blade in my mouth, and we had a match with the sheep herders, and it was Jonathan Boyd and Luke Williams. Butch wasn't there at the time. It was in the Nashville territory. And I carried my blade in my mouth, and when I spit my blade into my hand to do something, somebody hit me in the back, and my blade went flying into the audience. Well, now I got to start bleeding somehow. So I make the mistake of going to Jonathan Boyd and say, hey, man, you still got your blade? Cut me. And he goes, sure, mate. And he reaches up and he cuts my artery right here on my temple. Yeah. And all of a sudden, I could feel it coming out real hot, like warm. And I was on the floor, and I turned my head on front row, and I was spraying people with blood coming out of the side of my temple. And all of a sudden, I looked down at my tights. I had on these zebra tights with the fabulous ones in, and they were red and black, and my white boots were red. And I'm going, oh, my God. And I put my hand up there trying to protect myself. But in the melee of a tag match, and we're all fighting on the floor with poles and chairs and stuff, nobody's registering that I'm dying here, right? Bleeding to death. And I grabbed my head and I started fighting my way back to the dressing room. And I got into the dressing room and I sat on a folding chair and told Joe Yamamoto come over to me. And he's looking at me and goes, oh, no good, no good. You got too much, too much. And I look, and between my legs, I could see a whole puddle now of blood from where it was coming out. And I don't know how much I'd lost. I looked at Stan. I said, call an ambulance. And they got an ambulance in there, and they rushed me to the hospital. And it was in the early 80s there, and there was a time when everybody was worried about getting blood transfusion because of HIV. So when the ambulance got there, I'm going, okay, I'm safe now. Ambulance is here. All they did was wrap a turban around my head. It got to be like a beach ball and put me in an ambulance. And as they're taking me, said, which hospital you want to go to, Mr. Keirn? I go, I want to go to the closest one. What are you talking about? I don't have a favorite hospital in Nashville, you know? And the guy says, okay. And then he gets on the thing and scares me unreal. He gets on the radio and goes, oh, yeah, this is ambulance. Rah, rah, rah. We got a bleeder on here and we're losing him. And I go, what'd you just say? What'd you just say? And he said, well, your blood pressure has dropped and you're on almost zero. And I go, oh my God, don't let me die. And Stan was freaking out in the ambulance when we got there, you know. I mean, it just, I couldn't take any blood because I wouldn't take a blood transfusion. And what happens is when you lose that much blood, your blood replenishes 50% in 24 hours. Then it goes to a quarter, 25% for the next 24 hours. And then it decreases along. So I was about 3 days where I couldn't even raise my arms because I was that close to being out of blood.
Oh, wow.
And that was another one of those things that I never got on my knees and thanked Jesus for that. And he was the one that brought me through that, you know. But then as you get older, they say you get wiser. You got to remember where I grew up. I grew up in Port Tampa. Tampa, and then there's the port. And so I grew up with Hulk Hogan, Austin Idol, Dick Slater, Mike Graham. I mean, you know, we all as little kids played in that area down there. We all grew up together, but none of us were smart. There's none of us that are educated to where we can say we're even half smart. I mean, you know, it's like anything to do technology. You guys witnessed that right off the bat.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
What's wrong with this guy? Doesn't he know how to do that? No, he's just doing this over on the phone. Yeah. But I'm still blessed. I mean, you know, I got common sense and I can count change.
That's good. I gotta ask you, who came up with the Skinner gimmick when you were in WWF?
That's a good one. Okay, transition from names and people to characters. Okay, I left. I was trying to diversify, like I said earlier. So I saw Jimmy Harden at a Walmart, and I said, "Hey, Jimmy, talk to Terry and see if he can get me a job up there." I said, "I'm just kind of like lost, and I'm working indies, and I'm doing 3 or 4 different kinds of jobs. I'm trying to support my family, and I need to do something else, and maybe I'd come up there and be a character." And so Jimmy went right up to Terry. Terry called me in a couple of days and said, "Well, what do you got?" I said, "Well, I just killed 15 alligators in the first alligator harvest in the state of Florida. They've been on the endangered species list for 26 years. I got a license and I killed 15. I've got hides, skulls. I've got like this bad boy right behind me. He's an 11-footer up there on the wall, and a straight little stick that you see under him, that's the bang stick I killed him with." And when I went to see Vince, they called me to come up to New York. Connecticut. Anyway, so when I went up there to the office, I go in and it's Pat Patterson and Vince McMahon. Well, I know both of them. I mean, I'm not like a stranger here, and I've got a lot of credentials. So anyway, I killed the 15 alligators. I show up for Vince, and knowing Vince, he wasn't even smart when I was coming up there. They wouldn't let him in the dressing room. And Pat Patterson had already had a run-in with him. I don't know if I should be telling all this, but he's dead. And so Pat Patterson had a run-in with him. Don't let me get off my track. But anyway, I wrestled Pat Patterson the first time in Miami Beach. I went out there and I beat Pat Patterson half to death. I kept him so far at arm's length. He didn't even go for the finish. He got about 5 minutes into it. I'd pulled half his hair out just trying to keep his head away from me. And he got out of the ring and walked back and got counted out. And that wasn't the finish. So I had really a little heat with him. And now I'm sitting in front of him asking for a job. And he's the booker. And so I'm on shallow ground as it is. So I'm saying, well, I killed these alligators and I don't know, everybody's a character up here. Maybe you could come up with something. So Vince is looking at the stuff, right? I got a big skull off of a 12-footer. I mean, it took 2 suitcases to get this stuff up there. He says, I'll tell you what, Steve, we're going to go ahead and hire you. I'm going to give you a job. Go home, get rid of that bleached blonde hair, let your beard grow from now until the time we get you back. He said, I'm going to come up with a character and you just go back to a natural look, but, you know, get rid of the bleach blonde hair stuff. So I was gone. So I said, you're going to pay me? Go home? And am I going to work? And he's going, yeah. I said, I like this job already, you know? So I'm going like, I hadn't even been to TV and seen they got free food yet, catering every day. So anyway, so I go back, stay home. Vince called later. Somebody called from the office. I don't want to make it sound like Vince and I were calling each other. So somebody's called the office and had me catch a flight. I come back up. I go in the office and Vince goes, we got the character for you. I'm going, hey, great. So he goes, did you see the movie Deliverance? Now, Kevin Sullivan taught me this, to really put your boss over and really be excited about his ideas. And swallow pride no matter what it is, because it's the only one that's going to take care of you is you.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to be really nice to Vince, and I'm going, yes, sir. I saw that movie 100 times.
Yeah.
And then I'm bragging about knowing all about the movie. And he goes, well, I want you to be one of those guys in that movie. And I'm going, oh, who else? I was a fabulous one just recently. I look like a Chippendale dancer, man. I'm a stud. I guess I'm going to be Burt Reynolds, right? And Vince looked at me, and Pat Patterson goes, no, that's not the guy. We had mine. You remember one of the 2 guys in the woods with Ned Beatty that said, hey, boy, you got a right pretty mouth. And I go, I remember them 2 guys. He goes, I want you to be one of those guys. Wow. And I go, hey, no problem. And I had a blast. Here's Skinner on my shirt. I had a blast being Skinner. He was kind of, the thrilling part of the wrestling business in my career was obviously when I was single, doing singles for world titles and being pushed and used everywhere. And, you know, traveling from one end and Japan always being taken care of and all of the different things that came with coming out of Florida. But now I'm a character, and it's the first time in probably 18 years of a full-time career, I'm not myself. I'm not Steve Keirn. And now I'm imitating somebody. I'm like in a movie. And that's the way I looked at it.
Yeah.
I do my interviews. I'm looking at the camera. I'm imagining, who cares? This is Skinner. This ain't Steve Keirn. So I could say anything I wanted to. Well, I got kind of a little bit too far racial later on with Virgil, but I was a redneck out of the Everglades. You know, don't tell me to be a character and then tell me, oh, well, you wouldn't say that. Oh, yeah, I would. I just did. Anyway, but my interviews were dynamic, and I had so much fun, and they were so easy. And when I would get lost in an interview before, I'd just start rambling. Now, when I get lost, I just start laughing. And then I added the big mouthful of licorice to it to make it look like chewing tobacco. And I just let it run out of my mouth. And I was entertaining myself, watching myself. I was going, oh my God, look at this. I had 2 lizards one time. I brought 2 lizards from home, just little chameleons. They're all over my yard. The camera guys from New York were terrified in all my vignettes because they were all done in the swamps. But I brought these 2 lizards. They thought they had gotten away from all the dangerous stuff with Skinner. And when you're a kid, you can thump them on the head, right? And the lizard gets mad and opens his mouth, and then you let him clamp onto your ear. Yeah. And I got 2 lizard earrings. And I go out there to do the thing. And one of the guys thought they were rubber earrings, right? And while I'm talking and I'm going off with somebody, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. And I'm going, yeah, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, I'm going to skin you alive. And the guy looked around the camera like this, and he's looking and looks back around. Your earring's moving. It's alive, dummy. And I reached up and I pulled it off, and then I said, this is what I'm going to do. And I was entertaining them, but I thought I'd be just entertaining everybody, but it didn't entertain. I made a big mistake, and this is like about the 3rd time I've done this. I let him run down my mouth. I just go, watch this. And I put the lizard in my mouth. Well, he got all tangled up in the licorice. And I'm trying to bite down, and I'm thinking in my mind, are chameleons poisonous? And I'm going, wait a minute. And I spit him out, so anyway. So the name Skinner came from the movie Deliverance. Vince and them created a whole character, but I added touches to it and did it very carefully when I asked, because he had me in the original artwork had me in a sailor cap turned down like Gilligan. I didn't like that. I was going, can I get rid of that? I'll put an old straw hat on with anything but that. I mean, I'd already seen Tugboat wear that stupid hat, so I'm not wearing it too. So he just flipped it inside out for me. But anyway, that's how Skinner went to work.
Well, and obviously Steve didn't die, and we're glad. And glad you didn't die as well. I mean, that's good. But as we kind of wrap this episode up, Chris, I mean, I as we've both been pastoring, we've both been around people a long time and dealt with them at various points in their journey of faith.
Right.
I mean, why? What have you noticed about people's journey? Why is everybody so different?
I think some people are sometimes intimidated when they hear other people's, testimonies of faith, thinking like, man, I've never had anything happen to me like that. There's the dramatic journey of faith and coming to know Christ, like the Apostle Paul on the Damascus Road. But not everybody has a Damascus Road experience. Most people, are good people. They hear the gospel, it touches their heart, and they respond.
Yeah.
And
that doesn't make their faith any less real or dynamic.
No, absolutely not. So you're out there saying, I haven't had an experience. Neither of about 99% of the other people in the world. Yeah. So you're okay. So don't worry about it.
Yeah. So I guess our good word for you is if you didn't crawl out of the gutter, addicted to some sort of illegal substance, and you had to pull your life back out of the pit somehow. If you didn't do that and you came to Christ, it's okay. I mean, God is going to use you and your story to bless somebody else.
Right.
And you're going to connect with them in a powerful way.
And it's going to be a great journey for you.
Okay. We have we've been blessed to hear Steve's story today. And again, as I said, I'm a fan. So I'm a big wrestling geek, and so for me to be able to talk with him was just fun, and I spent a lot of time laughing along the way. And, but we got to get out of here. We can't stay any longer.
Right.
We're out of time. Abundant TV is going to kick us to the curb if we stay too long.
Exactly.
And so, any advice you got for our folks before we leave?
Just remember, in your journey of faith, don't tap out.